that right front change, and that line appeared down the center of the tire, and then it kind of disappears as the contact patch levels out on the straightaway. But we are in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of woodworkers up here, so Rossi lathing his way through turns 3 through 5.
I think in the 9th grade I made like a wood tortoise for like to put a teapot on, you know?
That is a very weird.
I think it started out as a tortoise, but it came out looking like a wombat.
By the way, no, I'm not even going to go there.
This is coming out of turn 7 there, just straight. See how dry and dusty it is right over the curb there.
That was more of planing, to use the woodshop analogy. Planing the floor.
Oh, that is rough.
But you see it out of turn 6, and you see it there. That's where Ferrucci dropped the right rear. Missed the apex by a little bit. Hear the engine rev up.
Getting after that front bar.
He thought about it. I'm not sure I had enough time to actually get it. His teammate, meanwhile, Pato Award up top. Oh, Will Power there on the inside of David Malukas. Getting a bit racy in practice. Malukas coming off that strong result from Gateway. Back on the podium 2 years in a row there.
David Malukas, boy, wasn't he in the mix. Really in the mix. He was in the action in more ways than one. He had to get past the race leader to get back onto the lead lap. He had a bit of a skirmish with Scott McLaughlin. He had a few hairy moments. Let's take you back and remind you what went down last weekend. The high point, of course, for him was standing on the podium with his hero, or one of his heroes, Scott Dixon. But he had to do it the hard way. He did it the hard, fast way. Let's remind you on what went down between himself and Scotty Mack.
You see that gaggle of cars there. A little bit of contact, and Scott McLaughlin's so lucky to hang on to it.
Yeah, that could have been a big one. That was a double huge moment for McLaughlin. It was the recovery from the first contact, and then he's up in the gray, and the back stepped out again, and Power and Malukas are not finished.
And I'm not sure McLaughlin and Malukas are finished either. McLaughlin let young Dave, little Dave, know exactly how he felt about it.
Yeah, I like the fact that little Dave is starting to throw around some pretty big shoes, because he's not really laying over with any of these things. He's getting more aggressive as he gets more comfortable, more confident, and I think as he feels like he really belongs at the front of this IndyCar grid, and potentially maybe even signing a new fresh contract with a big team. He's out there driving like, hey, I belong at the front.
Definitely not laying over today in the bullpen, making comments about living rent-free in a 30-year-old's head as a 22-year-old kid or whatever he is. So yeah, he's not letting himself get pushed around. But he just hasn't had the consistency this year. It's been a bit of a slump. We saw some really strong performances out of Malukas and Dale Coyne Racing last year. It's been a bit more of a struggle this season. You see the last 3 road course finishes. Obviously Mid-Ohio was a strong result, but well outside where they'd like to be, both at Road America and Indy GP.
I feel like with DCR sometimes we know the tracks where they're good. You know, they go to a place like Gateway, and they've had good cars in the past, and they back it up.
Look at that. Sorry, Jensen,
this car doesn't look particularly healthy. Elio Castroneves looks like he's losing some kind of...
There might be water bags holding down some of these. Yeah, there it is. Hit one of the signs. Now,
better that than sand.
This is going to be an interesting conversation over the course of the weekend, because you're supposed to then actually use the second part. Man, he went way hot there. But you're supposed to use the second part of this chicane that they've built through that turn 1 runoff to merge back onto the track. In practice and qualifying, your lap's getting deleted either way, but it's still good practice to get used to turning back to the left in that scenario, going through the right gate.
The water bags are better than the sandbags. When you were still driving, Hinch, Townsend, you remember that year where there was the Indy Next kid?
It was Dalton Kellett.
Was it Dalton?
It was Dalton
he went
Kellett,
through and did like a full Dukes of Hazzard over it.
I think it eliminated both front sides of the suspension. Right?
He thought it was just a signboard, and he thought he could, go through it. So he actually accelerated, I think, not realizing there was anything in it.
Those sandbags turned into money bags. 33
and a half minutes to go, and another little anxious moment there for Elio. Let's talk Rookie of the Year, seeing how we're getting close to the end of the racing year for the IndyCar Series, and a problem here for Ryan Hunter-Reay
A lot of
again.
issues with the rear.
It's in the final corner, same general area where Hunter-Reay went off earlier. This time at corner exit. It was corner entry before, as Hunter-Reay reminds his team that he's been struggling with all kinds of issues on rear grip this session.
Is this the third red flag?
It is.
I think it is, yeah.
Who's counting?
Just
Russ is.
Yeah, our man Russ is on the case when numbers are concerned. He gave us a very definite 3. Let's have a look at what happened to RHR.
So yeah, again, just
Struggling.
dropped a little bit offline.
Question is, was he losing the rear before that moment?
And that's why it goes,
yeah,
maybe, yeah.
or on entry, and it just kind of compounded the problem.
Let's find
Tell us
out.
more.
Yeah, it just started to go, didn't it, as he got to power
He had
and then dropped the
understeer.
left rear.
And understeer in turn 12 at the apex. It was a little wide of the line, and then I think try to basically turn the car on the
Power
throttle a
out of
bit and get some rotation. Luckily, kept it out of the fence.
Yeah, I mean that's a quick corner there, and that's a concrete wall you're going to meet where he ended up. So lucky to get on the anchors there, get it slowed down. Again, he's going to have to now sit for a 5-minute penalty for causing that red. I think the team's going to need all of that and then some to have a look at the data, maybe make a change or two, get this number 20 bitnile.com car a little bit better suited for what Ryan's looking for.
Where's VK's 18th right now, Hunter-Reay's teammate at Ed Carpenter Racing?
So while we've got a little bit of quiet, maybe we should go back to where we were starting before Ryan had that moment there, and we were addressing Rookie of the Year, getting to the end of the racing year, and we were showing you the Ridgeline Lubricants bright green number 11 of Marcus Armstrong. There he is. He's also in that silly season discussion. Boy, if it's judged on how well he's done this year, we should see this young New Zealander next year, no worries, because he's been impressive. He boasts just a 20-point lead over Augustine Canapino in the Rookie of the Year standings with 2 races to go. Now, I want to tell you a story, guys, because you may have noticed on Scott Dixon's car the PNC Bank Women in Motorsport signage. Well, this young lady here is from the very first year and the very first class of the PNC Bank Women in Motorsport Initiative. That's Rebecca Hutton, and she has now been employed full-time. So from going from the first class of interns to now being on the stand for the 11 team, and the window for the prospective interns to apply opens today, opens this weekend for year number 3, which will be next year. There were 3 young women, one from Arizona University, one from Indiana University, one from Auburn University this year. Haley Hine, Nicole Goodman, and Regan Moody all did the program this year for the 3-month window that PNC Bank Women in Motorsport Initiative happened. And look, for those 3, you can see here in Rebecca Hutton that an internship can actually turn into a real job that can change your life.
Well, it starts with desire, so if that's something interesting to you, track it down, apply, and maybe you too could be part of the program going forward. Now, looking at these rookie point standings, and Diff, you were just talking about what a great job Marcus Armstrong's done this year. Now, winning Rookie of the Year is one thing. Finding your next opportunity in IndyCar is a whole nother. And what I wonder is, Marcus Armstrong's done a great job. He's been very consistent, but best finish so far this season, 7th. In a Chip Ganassi car, the car that is going to win the championship. It's either going to be Dixon or Palou. The question is that enough? Is a 7th enough of a pop in your rookie year to get a team to say, hey, that's our guy? Because in the meantime, guys have come along in one race. Linus Lundqvist puts himself on the map. Chip signs him to a multi-year deal.
Yeah,
Just
fair.
like that.
I mean, he wasn't running 7th in those races, so, you know, it's...
But Chip didn't sign Marcus to that contract. We don't know. But
No,
we,
yes.
we should assume that didn't happen.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think, look, I think a couple things playing into that. If you think back to Road America, he had a podium on the cards before a maybe misjudged call from pit lane there.
Maybe a win.
Who knows? But certainly up in that conversation. And Marcus has been very methodical, I think, about his introduction to IndyCar, because one thing you can give him, he's been very consistent. Totally. He's finished a lot of laps. I don't think we've seen a single notable error, unforced error out of him or crash out of him. He's taking care of cars. Chip likes winners. Chip hates people that wreck his race cars. So he's got half of that skill set down. Certainly, I think he's done enough to merit another crack at a full season. You got to remember, he's leading the points 4-5 now races down on Augustine Canapino, having not competed in the ovals.
Big opportunity for Canapino at St. Louis to try to grab a bunch of points with Armstrong not running the ovals, as Will Power is finding his way around the water bags.
See, that's what you got to do. You got to go through these chicanes here. There's the second part, very clearly designed by IndyCar to penalize drivers going through them.
I like the enhancements through the years. You got water bags now. You've got little cones placed. It's starting to look a bit like a driving school down there.
By the way, it'll be the same as what it has been last year, maybe the last couple of years, where on lap 1, turn 1, if you blow through there and there needs to be a field reorganization, those who stay on the racing surface, you can treat that area there like gravel or grass or whatever. You can make it up in your own mind. The drivers, race control don't want the drivers there. So those who stay on the track will be reorganized ahead of those. This is what happened to Will again. This is up at the top end of the circuit before he got onto the front straight.
Here we are down in turn 1. Let's listen. It's just a really low grip surface right now, T-Bell. It just seems
still running.
The track's pretty green. He wasn't even offline, I wouldn't say.
He picked up the wheel spin and then just kind of tried to ride it out, and it spun up just unexpectedly on him.
All right, fellas, let's finish off that story about Rookie of the Year, because we've seen one side of it. Let's talk about the other side of it. That's Juncos Hollinger's Augustine Canapino, and with more, here's Dylan Welsh.
Yeah, he's had a great rookie year, impressed a lot throughout this year. So we saw that David Malukas highlight package from St. Louis. One of the things that we didn't see that I think we're going to see now is a little pit road skirmish between he and this 78 car. So you see there, the Juncos car pulled out, and then it got a foot from one of the Dale Coyne Racing crew members. Well, tempers are high, and they always are during the race, but it's all been in good fun with a week to cool off, because the Juncos car now has a footprint right there on the nose wing of this race car, and the perpetrator from Dale Coyne Racing actually came down and compared his foot size and his actual foot to the decal I saw. So all in good fun, and tempers are hot, as we always say down there on pit road, but the teams are both playing it up and playing into it.
So Canapino's best race result this year, fellas, has been 12th. And he hasn't got that once. He hasn't got it twice. He's got it 3 times.
What the first two in the first 2 races?
Exactly.
Yeah.
On a street course and an oval. And then he did it again later in the year, I think in Toronto. Yeah, it was in Toronto. So pretty good stuff from Augustine Canapino.
And I think importantly, the difference, of course, between the 2 campaigns with him and Armstrong is Canapino running the full season and getting that critical oval experience. And that's something Marcus Armstrong doesn't have, right?
Yep.
Never
Yep.
raced an oval. So now if you're a team looking to take a chance on a driver, boy, that's a big learning curve that Canapino has already ticked off and showed what he's capable of there. I looked to Canapino's teammate, Callum Ilott, in the 77. His best result came at, was it St. Pete? 5th?
Yeah.
Looks like it. Then 9th at Texas. Ilott started off really strong, but it's been all finishes in the teens and 20s since then, as Canapino, I think, has really closed the gap and started to really match his more experienced open wheel teammate in Callum Ilott.
But let's not forget, Hinch, I know you're about to go, let's not forget, one comes from an open wheel background, the other one comes from a touring car background.
No, for sure. I just want to shout out Callum's finish at Gateway was 9th, so he had a top 10 there. But yeah, I mean, incredible what Canapino's done. I mean, to come from such a different form of motorsports, having never raced an open wheel car, never seen any of these racetracks, never been to an oval race in his life, the way he's adapted. And again, like Marcus Armstrong, very few mistakes. We don't see the 78 car in the runoff a lot. We don't see it in the wall. We don't see it on the back of a truck. He's been very good and methodical about just logging his laps and learning as much as he can in his rookie campaign. And I really do hope that he gets another season along this man, the young Englishman,
Yeah.
Callum Ilott, using every inch of racetrack here.
I'm really curious where Callum Ilott ends up. Kevin Lee, I wonder if you've got any insider observation, because this is a highly rated driver looking for his future as well. What do you think we might see out of this guy?
My best guess is he is going to be in the seat that he's in next year. I've wondered as well. So from what I gather, his contract is a little bit confusing, and I think there's some clauses and some options. I don't know who holds the options. I do believe he's technically under contract for next year, but who knows what outs are involved there. If he were to leave, the ones that would make sense, and it might even take a buyout to get him, would have been the McLaren, but everyone tells me that that's going to be David Malukas. If Andretti runs a fourth car, could he be an option there? Maybe, but then you have the situation with the contract and a potential buyout needed. So my best guess is he's where he's at this point next year.
Hey, have we mentioned that Alex Palou, the championship leader, is on top? He's been there for quite a while, by the way, with 23 minutes to go over Pato Award, Marcus Armstrong. Championship contender Scott Dixon and Christian Lundgaard in the top 5. Defending race winner Scott McLaughlin, then Graham Rahal. Devlin Di Francesco off to a nice start for the weekend, and then Rinus VeeKay in the Ed Carpenter Bitnile Chevrolet, and Romain Grosjean in the top 10 as we speak. This is Kyle Kirkwood in the Auto Nation Honda for Andretti Autosport. The two-time winner this year just jumped up to 11th as he dives for pit lane. He had a little moment. Let's have a look.
Kirkwood turn 1.
Whoa.
Rinus VeeKay coming out of the pits, and Kirkwood going wide of the apex there. Wisely.
Yeah, I would have maybe just struck my feet a little bit more if I was Rinus VeeKay there.
Yeah, VeeKay timing it perfectly to be in play.
Coming out on a sticker set was the driver of the 21. So let's keep an eye on his lap times right now up at 9th. Strong effort right now.
Be nice to see one or both of the Bitnile cars have a good weekend, considering that the sponsor of the team is the principal sponsor of this Portland International Raceway event. Dev? Dylan, pardon me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll jump in here, Diff. So if you remember, Rinus had a pretty good run going here last year before some contact with a lap car, and an ensuing penalty kind of knocked him down the ultimate finishing order. But the last 2 races, he has advanced 8 spots and 9 spots. So I talked to him today, you know, is that something we can put stock in? The Ed Carpenter cars have been trying to improve all year, and he said, honestly, the speed that we've shown the last couple of weeks has been there for 5 or 6 races. We just haven't had any good luck. In the last couple of races, we finally had some things fall our way. So I think it's good mojo and it's good vibes down there. And Rinus acknowledged that Ryan Hunter-Reay has been a huge help and a huge addition to the entire team. So it's good signs to end the year on, and hopefully they can continue that momentum that they've built on into the offseason and into next year as well.
It's really nice for him to be around somebody as experienced and tenured as Ryan Hunter-Reay. For you guys, you think back to when you were young drivers, who had a big influence from within a team on you guys, and maybe it wasn't at this level.
Ryan Hunter-Reay.
Yeah.
Honestly, I learned a ton from him as well. I can kind of understand what Rinus is dealing with. But honestly, I've had a lot of teammates that were like that. Oriol Servia, my rookie year, was a huge help to me. You know, as was Ryan as I moved over to Andretti Autosport. So it is such a help for a young driver to have that experience next to you in the engineering office, to be able to look at their data, pull from their experience. So it's yeah, I can certainly understand why he's enjoyed that relationship.
Well, not to age myself too much, but for me it was Rick Mears. When I was in Indy Lights, his nephew Casey Mears was my teammate. Rick would hang out at either a few of our tests, or we'd see him on pit lane in his role with Team Penske, but he'd come down and have a chat and would always share very short, concise, but extremely valuable insights. He was a man of few words, but you hung on every single syllable. And also Jimmy Vasser, my teammate for my first few IndyCar races.
Yeah, I'll take it.
He was able to give me great calming advice in critical moments. Is here Rinus VeeKay, not so calm on the radio right there.
This guy's nice and calm running up front. He's got the alternate tires on. First runner we've seen do that, jumped up to P2. He's been strong here in the past, has Christian Lundgaard. And he was on track for a really good race last year before a little issue in turn 1 kind of eliminated him from contention.
He started 3rd, finished 21st last year.
He was on track for a top 6, top 5 maybe. picked up one of those barriers in that first turn runoff, and that was the end of the day for him, respectively.
Exciting news here. We've got Bavarian Heats.
Minutes left here in this first practice session.
Oh, I just love hearing that commitment required for that 10-11.
This is your last lap. You will box this time.
.45 here is getting it done on reds, guys. Lundgaard 58.1 with 16 to go. Surprised by what a gap we see on the softer red tire, Dylan. Pretty good jump.
Yeah, for sure. And this has actually been an improvement even all session for Lundgaard, because they were not very happy at the start. Sounds like they made a couple of both front and rear bar changes in addition to kind of switching through the tire compounds. And it's kind of brought this car to life, but they were happy with it too, with the changes they made on the blacks. And so much so that now Graham Rahal is going to adopt some of these philosophies that they've learned on the 45 car. So some good teamwork going on for the Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan group.
And it's important to remember last year, James, the red tire was the tire to have. He wanted to run the blacks.
So they've brought a slightly different compound this year, Firestone has, for both the alternates and the primaries. And talking to some of the drivers, the anticipation was that they weren't going to see quite as big of a delta in lap time between the two. But, man, based on what we're seeing out of Christian Lundgaard, that is a healthy delta right now, sitting at 0.6 of a second on the shortest lap of the calendar. And look at that shot of the car just coming right up to the Armco.
You guys remember last year it was really Jimmy Johnson who was the first one to experiment very aggressively here in turn one. We noted that, and a lot of drivers started to make the adjustment, as you'll see just how close Felix Rosenqvist came to it. Wow, this is starting to look a lot like Monaco.
Yeah.
Through the pool section.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Great work by our production team to capture those images. How about that?
Nothing in it. I mean,
Watch
just
this.
look at that.
And here's the problem, is that somebody's going to clip the video we're showing right now from one of the other 26 cars, and an engineer is going to show it to his driver and say, this is what you need to do in turn one.
And then they're going to go clobber the wall.
And they're going to go rip off the right front suspension trying too hard.
Watch this. Colton Herta, Gainbridge Honda.
This was
last year.
Boom!
Did
Doink.
just that.
That's a Max Verstappen at Monaco.
Yeah, I think the Monaco guardrail has a little more give to it intentionally.
Well, I'll tell you what, you got to also be really careful about your hands. An injury that Colton Herta did have back in his Indy Lights career. I think it was over in Toronto, but that kickback from steel through the tire, through the suspension to your hands can be crippling.
So I tell you what, while this looks all pretty smooth and fast for Colton Herta, if we look to the bottom, off track goes Callum Eilert, but Tom Blomqvist has logged 24 laps, which is on the higher side for the group. Benjamin Peterson has pumped out 32, but Blomqvist is at the bottom of the order, so he's just taking it step by step as we see that replay of the wild moment from Eilert.
I'll tell you, Callum Eilert is thrilled that Portland hasn't got a lot of rain here the last few days, because that section through turn 5 there, you're absolutely on the edge. The tires are screaming. They've been under load for so long, and if you do drop a wheel, it actually falls pretty strong off camber and really sucks the car off the racetrack. And on wet grass, that's a one-way ticket to the tire barrier.
So since it is going to be a red race, I'm a little surprised to see more teams not go to the red tire a little earlier, Diff. And the reasons for that is you want to get a read on kind of a light fuel qualifying setup, but then the ability to use the remainder of this practice to fill the car up and work on race setup, assuming that red is the preferred compound. I would think that that would yield maybe more benefit than waiting till the very end of the session, just trying to do one quick lap.
Well, they can use this set of reds in warm-up.
I know.
At the end of the day.
But, boy, that's a pretty valuable time on race setup, because this is a track where you can pass. Last year, Scott Dixon, I think he restarted 8th. He finished 3rd. He was brilliant in the final stage of the race. He was very quick on red tires. And I think optimizing your setup, sure, you want to qualify well. And yes, the winner has come from the top 5 a bunch. But I think optimizing your setup on the reds for the race is potentially more valuable here than it would be at, say, Laguna Seca.
But I'm just not sure we can say with certainty yet that the red's the preferred tire for the race, because we have no idea what the deg's like. Yes, a big delta is great. That certainly is lap time you're going to want to use. But if it hits a cliff on lap 12, you're going to want to get off that thing as soon as possible.
I had a race engineer tell me these are the same Firestone tires as last year. At least that's what they've been told.
Now,
I have conflicting information to that.
How observant have the two of you been? Take a look at this as we stay with Marcus Ericsson down the front straight. Have you noticed the difference here? The covered stands and suites are no longer driver's right, and behind the pit lane, they're right there. So that's never been there. They've moved on to the outside of the straight. They always were kind of above the pits, so the fans and the guests could see what was going on in the pits. Now they're on the other side, kind of directly opposite where we are here at pit exit.
But now they can see all the action down in turn 1.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what really matters here in Portland. All the passes there, the starts, the restarts, all the chaos seems to happen as well in turn 1. So great view for the fans. Nice upgrade from the promoters here. And as we watched Rinus VeeKay, who's jumped his way up into the top 5, I think Dylan's found out a little information on what's going on with the 21.
Yeah, 4th right now, and we were talking about the pushing the limit in turn number 1. Here was some radio from VeeKay.
So all the curb in 1 and all the curb in 2. Like, I think the trick here is if you're going to do a big stint, you could use both of the curbs. You have to be later to throttle, just a stronger ramp up. Tip in too soon, you might upset the balance too.
Lots of process, but it's all about using as much of the racetrack as you can without getting over the curves too much. So that's what all these guys are trying to figure out, where the limit is.
Great piece of information from Lee Bentham. You know, there's spotters and there's spotter coaches in this series, and Lee Bentham, one of the best, giving very detailed technical feedback on driving style, what to try and what to expect in terms of the yield or the benefit there.
So, updating you on a couple of things with just over 10 minutes to go. Devlin DeFrancesco has just been told by race control that he's going to have to pay a fine after this weekend for leaving the pits with equipment attached, which is a big no-no.
Suboptimal to make him pay the fine.
Well, I don't think that's how it's actually going to work.
Yeah, right. So, let's take you back and show you another moment with Ryan Hunter-Ray. This has been an eventful session for Captain America. Boing, boing, big slide, catches it.
Yeah.
Does he? Yes, just.
It's one of those situations where you really have to commit to that curb. You either want to be just on the red and white bit with the right sides, or you want to be all the way up to the guardrail. That sort of halfway just doesn't work. So we see a replay now of Marcus Ericsson. This is out of turn 6. Same as Santino Ferrucci. Just dropped 2 wheels in the dirt, managed to avoid the spin, but just look at how, like you say, every time a car goes off, it just throws that much more stuff onto the racetrack for the cars behind.
Kind of what I was talking about earlier. They're out on that exit curb, and then it just flat ends.
Yeah.
Like the end of a, you know, like the start of a cliff.
Hey guys,
and you're off into the dirt heavy.
You remember at the Indy Road Course a couple of years ago when we first saw Christian Lundgaard, when he put in the Firestone Fast 6 and qualified 4th? Lundgaard leads this session. His new teammate, Yuri Vips, first time at an IndyCar race weekend, certainly first time at Portland International Raceway, and he is in 10th position. That's a fine job.
It is pretty impressive. I mean, the majority of the cars have run their alternates. They just slipped down to 11th, but right in front of Graham Rahal. This is the first time he will have driven on an alternate tire and found that extra grip, knowing where to find it, which types of corners you're going to find the best gain, where in the corner. Is it on the brakes? Is it mid-corner speed? Is it on throttle? That's a lot to ask a driver. You can see him huffing and puffing from the physicality of that extra lap time.
Yeah, and I think this is a great spot to make your debut as a rookie. If you're going to pick a track mid-season to do it, I think Portland is pretty favorable because there's no elevation change. There's not a lot of huge bumps. There's some subtleties to figure out in terms of the driving style, but it's pretty forgiving, as opposed to, say, Tom Blomqvist showing up at Toronto on some brutally bumpy street circuit with varied surfaces, concrete walls everywhere, and all of that anxiety. Here, I think you can just drive a little looser, a little freer, and a little more comfortably, knowing that there's more of a margin for error.
So, a little bit of an interesting one in this session, that the three Penske Chevrolets are further down than where they would like to be. The highest placed is the Hitachi Chevy of Joseph Newgarden. Kev, tell us more.
And he just jumped up to 9th on a run on the alternates, but he's been back in the 20s and teens throughout this session. And going back to the conversation that Hinch and Townsend were having is, well, yes, it has been stated that this year's tire is similar, but it's similar but different. Might be a little bit softer, might not degrade as much. And what we're hearing from a lot of drivers is we think it's similar to the Indianapolis May tire on the road course. Obviously, the Penske's, Joseph and the company, were hoping it's like last year. Remember, they qualified 1, 2, 3 and were dominant, but they're thinking it's more like May, and some have concerns. If it is like the May tire, hey, you might keep an eye on Alex Palou, because he dominated the Grand Prix in May at Indianapolis.
He most certainly did.
And he was the highest sitting driver before these alternate runs started. On the primaries, he was the quickest. But think back to that race. Ganassi was quick. You see Palou up there. Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing was quick. All three of their cars qualified in the top 8 back in the May race. And you see Lundgaard up there at the moment. So a little bit of consistency if that is the tire that they're on.
I'll be watching Lundgaard here because he was one of the first drivers to go to the red, and he's still on track circulating. We don't know exactly how many laps are on the red. Let's call it 8, 9, something like that. So the 45 cross the start finish. That last lap was a 59.9. Let's just ride on board for a lap and try to get a sense of what these are like on a race run.
Oh, off goes Colton Herter.
That went off.
Is it turn 6 again? We've seen a few guys have issues there. Now it's got dirt all over those Firestone Reds.
So just putting a pin in the Lundgaard situation. It looked pretty good to me. Didn't seem to be struggling too much, maybe spinning up the rears a bit. So,
But the lap time, almost 2 seconds off his best. That's a pretty big jump.
how much fuel did they put in it?
Herter's down in 21st position at the moment. Highest placed Andretti car is Kyle Kirkwood. Two-time winner is sitting second behind Christian Lundgaard. This is what happened to Colton.
In the turn 6 years, had that snap on entry. You've seen that a couple times. You saw the same thing happen to Tom Blomqvist earlier.
This is a massive save. Watch this. I mean, over the last couple years, nobody's been more sideways and gotten away with it than Colton Herta, whether it's at the GP in the wet behind Pato Award on slick tires or at St. Louis last weekend. He had a massive save down in, what was that, turn 3. Quick hands.
I thought you were talking about the one going into the pits. You know, when there
I
were
forgot
three,
all about
when
that
there were
one.
3 going into one spot. That was crazy. Now, nothing happened there. See, I was watching you guys. Might have been on replay on the way home on the plane.
Appreciate that.
A little bit of lock up there, just so subtly from Canapino there in the last corner. Drops the tires so close to the tire wall.
David Malukas.
Boy.
And Joseph Newgarden.
Malukas and Team Penske, they're finding each other all the time here.
That was a message. That was not that was a very intentional fade over from Joseph Newgarden there to show his displeasure with Malukas. I guess I would assume just kind of sitting in the middle of 1 and 2 there, but as you say, no love lost between this young driver from Illinois and the Bus Bros at the moment.
So 3.5 minutes to go. Let's have a look at some lap counts. Let's have a look at championship positions. Championship leader Alex Palou on screen in the blue and white American Legion Honda. Alex sits 3rd at the moment, and the championship chaser Scott Dixon down in 18th. Romain Grosjean nicely positioned in the top 10. Here's Palou. Let's have a closer look. How's he going to play this one? Knowing that he's got plenty of cushion, but this thing is not over. It is not put to bed just yet.
No, it sure isn't. If there's one driver that you don't want hunting you down late in a championship, it'd be Scott Dixon.
I think Dylan has more on that. Tell us about Scott's session.
Well, they're down in 18th, so haven't been exactly thrilled with the balance. They were making a damper change a little bit earlier in the session, which is not entirely uncommon. We see that a lot in these practice sessions, but more to be desired for sure for the 9 car. And the thing too that these guys always have to be conscious of is just trying to get qualified better. It's kind of been the Achilles heel the last couple weeks, the last couple of races. They haven't started better than 15th. Now that hasn't harmed them at all, obviously, because he's found a way to get to victory lane both times, but you always want to qualify as well as you can, especially here at Portland. So they want to try and get the balance figured out as soon as they can before tomorrow.
All right, we'll follow that story. Thanks for that, Dylan. Want to take you back to some recent radio from Scott Dixon. Have a listen. He's not happy.
Is Malukas doing? I don't know what the he's doing, but he's slowed way down.
Okay. Scott Dixon not too pleased with little Dave Malukas.
And it sounds like a similar thing that I suspect was the issue with Joseph Newgarden there, just kind of slowing down at inopportune times of the track. But guys, look, we're on a 1.9 mile circuit. It's the quickest lap time on a rotor skip to see.
Sticker Reds trying to do 1 lap. See what you have for qualifying. You have somebody like Lundgaard out there, 12, 15 laps now on his used Reds, totally working on race setup for Sunday. Then you might have a David Malukas. Who knows? He could be bedding brakes. He could be checking mileage. He could be doing whatever, and you're in the way. But it is practice, and there's no guarantee that you get a clean lap. But what you don't want is a surprise, like what Scott Dixon delivered to Will Power at Road America in practice earlier this year. So it doesn't matter who you are, your circumstances are always pretty specific in practice. They're more universal in the race.
You guys were having a healthy discussion about tires, different between last year and this year. Well, I can tell you one thing that's different is that Christian Lundgaard is almost half a second faster than the time that Joseph Newgarden logged to be the quickest this same session a year ago.
Yeah, I was going to wonder about that, but
They
the
had
pace.
Reds last year though on Friday.
Yeah, I believe they did.
Yep.
But it's also interesting because we were down in the bullpen. We talked to Joseph Newgarden, and as we were sort of speaking about him earlier, Penske really dominated this event last year, and they did so, I think, off the back of being one of the few teams that came and tested pre-race.
Yep.
And we saw, obviously, McLaughlin with the win, Power right behind him. Joseph was fast, but had some issues during the race. I think he ended up 8th or something like that. But it was very much a Penske-dominated day. You look at where they are right now, it has changed. The tires are a little bit different. Where you're down the road, every other team will have evolved their setups a bit.
And this is something we hear from teams now in terms of how they decide where they're going to test. A lot of the times it has to do with whether or not they're going to get the tires that are the tires for the race, right? So is Firestone going to supply them the tire they'll be racing on? That can really impact which track they test and how they allocate those very valuable test days per the rules. Checkered flag out, Div.
There you have it, and it's only the second time that Christian Lundgaard has topped a session not counting a race, but just as far as those early sessions in a weekend. The last one was in Nashville a year ago where he had a very good run. But time now to hear from this man here. Pato Ward finished 4th on the speed chart. Kevin's there.
Packing up his gear after a good session getting the weekend started. How do you feel about where things are at this point?
I think we're looking all right. It's hard to say. I think it's going to be a little bit harder tomorrow. But no, we tried a bunch of different stuff. I think we've made the car better than what we started with, so that's a good thing. But still a couple tenths we need to get out of it.